Is there anything in particular like you really want to touch on, talk about, anything? I can just start asking you questions just before we
Just start
dive
asking me
in.
questions. Yeah, I don't know. Just go. Let's
Okay.
go.
Yeah, let's go. So, I'm really excited to talk to you today because we both coincidentally happen to be in the midst of birthing a creation baby through the form of writing our first book. And I think we're both at a kind of like similar timeline schedule along there where I don't know about you, but I've completed like 99% of the first rough draft and now stepping into this very interesting phase of like refining and editing and just recognizing how much of an experience it is to try to form your synthesis of perspective into a written manuscript that you can then deliver to the world. And since we're both going through that process at the same time, I thought I'd have some really interesting questions to ask you and like a lot of experience to share on that. So before I start asking anything specific, like how's the book going, man? How's the process been?
The biggest word that comes to mind is humbling. Because there's been many times where I'm like almost done. I'm like, this is great. And I'm like, this is an awesome process.
Yeah.
And other times I'm like, what? Like, oh man, I'm at the phase. I'll explain the phase I'm at. So I am taking all that I've written and I've re-storyboarded it and I've re-outlined it and I've restructured it and I've pieced in all the 3 months of writing that I've been doing into this new storyboard, and I'm filling the gaps. Basically, I'm like cleaning in and filling in the gaps and like putting more story into it. What I realized that I did was I basically wrote like a super like boring textbook of like a lot of different topics.
Yeah.
And then a few months ago, what it was is I set the goal to finish the draft by the time I left Mexico, and that was in March. And I did. I was like at this 99%. I had 45,000 words written, which like in theory could have stopped, but it like didn't feel cohesive and it didn't feel like a story. When I went back to like read through it, I'm like, this is jumping around from this to this. And I was like, I could just tell on that day when I sat down, I just went off in a tangent because I didn't start with the way I did it was not recommended. As I learned later, I had one document and I sat down and I just wrote whatever was, I don't want to say just like anything that was on my mind, but within the context of the book I was writing, I was just writing.
Yeah.
And it got to be a beast to sort through. And you actually gave me some recommendations about midway through that process of like getting organized. And I started using Scrivener.
It's helpful.
Was that the one?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's helpful. It helped to get things organized. And actually that's when I put it all into there. I took it out of the Word doc and I took like a full day to just organize it. And that's when I realized like, oh, like I've got some work to do in making this a cohesive story arc. And that's what I kind of went back to the drawing board to do. And I feel really good with where it's at now. And I basically built it into like the hero's journey architecture. And I have stories along with teachings, along with modalities and practices. And it's all intertwined into one versus being this like really dry, like step-by-step, rigid, this. So I would say I have a new goal now, which is to finish this 99%, to get it to the 100% by the time I leave Portugal, which is in about 3 weeks from now.
Give us the pitch for your book. Sell me on the book. Tell me what's it all about. What are you bringing into the world, my man?
Yeah, so I'm bringing in drama-free, trauma-free transformation through a modality that I've created, a system, a 3-phase system that I've created. And it's told through the story of my journey of how I got here, really over the last like 10 years or so. And weaving in like a lot of the lessons that I learned, not just from my perspective, but building them into like a way in which anyone can repeat them. It's basically like taking the scientific model and saying like, okay, this is what I did, this is my variables, and like this is how you can get these outcomes. And I basically built a way in which we can move through, and I based it on 4 pillars: physical, energetic, emotional, relational, and mental, and how we can move through these different challenges that we face in our life in a very systematic and, dare I say, light way, to take the drama out of a lot of the drama and like challenges, like the problems we create for ourselves. Is basically like starting to eliminate it in a very like matter of fact way, in a very just straightforward and easeful approach to growth or transformation or development. So the model's solid. It actually is very clear, and it's easy to follow. But like I said, it was dry until I started putting the flavor of my story, which actually has been more fun and interesting for me, because it's allowing me to go deeper into the lessons. Because I'll like jump back into the experience and I'll be like, oh, there was actually more levels to this. And then I can kind of like tease out some more things, some like takeaways from that. That's not the elevator pitch, but like that's the what's coming together.
Can't wait to see it. Can't wait to read it.
Yeah. Yeah. And really the big story, like this whole journey that I'm telling, is going from like overworked, unhealthy, broken, achievement only, goal-oriented mindset, like working my life away, to a life of fulfillment. One that I actually find joy in, I love, and keeps getting better every day. And I I try to tease out like the magic in that into like a practical way. So like how you can create that level of magic in your own life, almost like a magician does it in front of your eyes. Is like, we see something as magic because we don't understand it, but to them it's just a system they've practiced thousands or millions of times, and they just do it so artfully that it looks easy. And so I'm like teaching the way of transformation through that lens.
Have you locked in a title yet?
I haven't yet. There's a few working titles.
Pitch me some of them. I'd love to hear.
Yeah. The Fulfillment Blueprint.
Mm-hmm.
Drama-free transformation.
I like that. I like drama-free. Yeah, something about it just being drama-free feels really good in my... Just like, can we just take the drama out of all of this and just transform? Does it have to be dramatic?
That was actually, I'll credit that to Victoria. She has helped me a lot with like this story arc of it. Because I got to this overwhelmed state, and she supported me and helped me. And she actually, throughout the drama free, she's like, what you're saying is just like, you're just doing it without drama. Like you're taking all the like, I don't even say like the stress out of it.
Yeah, the friction.
Like, friction. Like, you just
frictionless. Frictionless fulfillment.
Frictionless fulfillment.
I kind of like that. It's a really interesting thing when you get to that point of like, all right, I'm like almost done with it, and then you realize like, wow, I haven't even started yet. Like you get so far, you put all these months, all this work into it, and you reach this like threshold point where you realize that the last 1% is like 70% of it.
Yeah. Amen. Like, yeah, you've nailed the last couple months of my life, to be honest. Yeah.
And then I don't know about you, but I gave myself a little break over the last 2 months. I was like, I need a little bit of space. I've been in front of this keyboard nonstop hours every day for years. It's good. Now I need to step away. And I'm honestly really hoping that this conversation is what sparks me like getting back into it. But I think that space was really necessary, because it's like you get so sucked into it, and having some perspective from stepping away, I think, will be valuable. And you said you hired an editor, right? You got somebody going through and helping you with the structuring of the words.
Yeah, I will be it's not to the editor yet. I'm basically in the self-editing, and then once I'm done, I'm going to send it to the editor. Yeah. So
Yeah.
I have a few, actually something that's been really helpful for me is I'm in a writer's group, and
That's awesome.
we write every day, but it's also like we've got a chat. It's a bunch of hilarious people that actually help with the like feeling like I was a writer, because really like what all these, a lot of them are like bestsellers and all this, and they're highly accomplished in the field, and they're just like, yeah, the only difference is we write every day and normal people don't, so that's what makes us a writer. And so it brought some lightness to it, which actually helped me a lot. And they also gave a lot of advice, one of which was give your book a break, like give it rest before you go to the next phase. Another one, I don't know why I'm sharing all of these, but another one is write your first draft from your heart and your second draft from your mind, and don't confuse the order.
I'll take these keys. Keep sharing. Keep coming. I like these. These are good. Yes. Receive.
What was the other one? Yeah, just sit down at the same desk in the same way and write for at least 15 minutes a day. Like that was the basic one. And that's what really kicked off for me.
I cannot do 15. In 15 minutes, I get like nothing done. I'm like, I have to do like 5 or 6 hours at a time to really like pull something out of me. I wish I could just sit down 15 minutes and get something finished, but it feels like, yeah, that time frame hasn't worked well for me. I've been really like, every time I sit down with it, it's gonna be a few hours, has been my writing experience.
Yeah.
I like the idea of casually just writing 15 minutes a day. It's been very immersive for me.
The wisdom that like comes with that is that those 15-minute sessions turn into 5-hour sessions.
Yeah, you lower the barrier to entry, so you don't feel like you have to sit down. It's like working out. It's like, just go to the gym, just show up. And then once you're there, you start moving, you want to keep moving.
Yeah.
That makes sense.
I mean, but it worked for someone like me, because on some days I was like 15 minutes and I like was just staring at a screen for 15 minutes and I'm like, I'm clearly done. Like,
yeah,
whatever, I'm done. I did my thing for the day. I checked the box. And then some days that 15 minutes, like you said, it was just like just hours and hours and hours of nonstop. But you don't get to the hours unless you show up every day, unless you sit in the seat. I think I wrote a post about it. I was like, that was another one. The advice was stop writing for social media and stop writing for a newsletter. Stop bleeding your creative energy out in other ways. If your book is really your priority, make it your priority. And that like hit me pretty hard, and it's caused me to be pretty disconnected. Like I really stopped my newsletter. I stopped posting on social media anything of like any sort of value. And it was hard at first, because it was like, oh, this is my connection with the world and this and that. And it was so true for me. When I stopped doing that, I had a lot more energy for the book.
Yeah.
It's not like giving it away, because ultimately the book is giving it away, but it's like you're just like constantly giving away the energy, and then there's little left to be part of this creation, this masterpiece.
That naturally happened to me as I was in this writing process. It was so focused on one thing that I didn't have the awareness to keep my social media presence. And it's like, it's hard when you build that momentum to let it slowly start to die. So currently what I'm working on is I am buffering a bunch of content. I want to get like a month's worth of stuff, and I'm figuring out how to automate it through TikTok, Facebook, Instagram all at once, so I can just like have it going out and then like turn that off and just focus back on the art, focus back on the craft. And there's something beautiful about that, about like, all right, the world is no longer my priority. I'm bringing this formation into being. And I've always identified as a craftsman, so I've really enjoyed the process of just making something my priority and diving in for hours, and like getting lost in that creation process is really beautiful. And I think it's special because this is our first book, you know?
Yeah.
And I think our next, there will never be another first time writing a book. So it's a very interesting experience to go through. Like you're talking about this identity of like, am I a writer? Like, do people like, all of these stories that come up as we birth this thing into being. But I think, I think you would agree, and I could definitely say for myself, it needed to come forth. Like it was just pushing at the walls, like screaming that like it come out. I need to come out. I need to come out. How was it? I'm sure you can relate to that.
It was identical, man. It was like beating me on the head. Like any moment of stillness, like I had a kind of lacked on this recently, but I had a really deep meditation practice, and every time I would go into meditation, it would just be like I would have visuals of it, and I have the words and the story. Like, it was just coming through, and I found myself just like, okay, like this is getting pretty obvious, and it just. At first, it really started to flow through like very organically. Like I really wasn't doing anything. I was just letting it come through. Again, I think that's the hard part, is like I got my heart draft out there, and now I feel like in the mental stage of it, which is a completely different journey for me, and it sounds like for you as well. It's like this mental stage of tweaking it and moving it and doing all these puzzle pieces. And this was another piece of advice from another writer mentor, and it goes. I don't know if it applies to the story or just like this mental aspect of like tweaking the heart draft in a way that people want to read it. It's not to, he didn't say it exactly this way, but the purpose isn't to like muddy up the heart draft. It's just to make it as easy as possible for people to receive it and like want to read it, basically. I think the advice was like, you put in all this work to write a book, like make it so that people want to read it. And that's like the marketing side and the way you title it and all this. He's like, would you rather like one person read this book or 1 million? And I'm like, 1 million. He's like, of course. And so that's your job to tell the story in that way so that 1 million people want to read it. So that was the advice.
I got this image of like, we've been like digging, trying to find this diamond. And like we finally, like we dig all the way down to this diamond, and now we have this like dirty diamond that we gotta like wash off and polish and like cut into the actual diamond. Mm-hmm. It's like we went down into the depths of ourself and our experience, like tunneling into this to pull this thing forth. And now it's like, all right, we got it. And now we got to form it into the thing that we can then present to the world. Yeah. But it's very daunting, just that realization of how much more, because I think the digging is the fun part. At least for me, it's like, that was the easy fun part. I could spend hours a day, and now I get to this like polishing, and it's very much like just the realization of how much polishing that there is to do is a little bit, I don't want to say disheartening, because it's not disheartening. It's just, what's the word? Daunting. Yeah, daunting. It's like you climbed, it's like when you climb all the way up to the hill, you think you see the peak, you get to the peak and you're like, holy shit, there's twice as much hill still to climb. And I needed a little break on that first peak, but I'm revving up for that next climb coming up ahead.
Mm-hmm. I think this conversation will be helpful for a lot of people, ourselves included, to like reflect on that, or like reflect on the fact that like the digging is a whole completely different process than the polishing, but they're both valuable. Like you can't get the final masterpiece without both.
So let me ask you this: why a book? Why not a course? Why not a video? Like why a book?
There was something about the, it feels like timeless to me. It feels like it will live on. And there was something in the challenge of, it was something really clear for me that I needed to have like a close and a release on. It's really easy to have a conversation that continues on, if you know what I mean. If it like, if you can continue to clear yourself up and continue to talk, it's easy to tell the story. But if there's a start and an end, you have to be much more intentional. You have to be conscious about the way you deliver it. You have to choose your words much more intentionally, because you can't just clean. Of course, you can have a second edition or a fifth edition, but like realistically, like the book is done once you press publish. And there was something in that I felt I needed. Like I needed some level of like being that intentional about something that was like releasing it and being okay with the product.
This is
So
interesting.
I think it's my own personal growth there.
This is interesting because I'm very much taking a different mindset on this. I am aware that this book is probably going to be something I work on for the rest of my life. There's going to be many editions, continual revisions. It's going to grow as I grow. More is going to come into it. There's probably going to be a volume 2. And I'm like okay with that and just want to get like the first edition done and out there. Right? Like not feeling like it needs to be completely complete, but just that it needs to be the first edition complete. And for me, I really love the idea of being able to hand somebody like my philosophy. Just be like physically, just be like, here, take this, go home. This is what I believe in. Like so that you can't do that with a video. I mean, you can send a link, but they can't hold it in their hands. And I love that idea of just like, I'm at a party, like, here's my book. Or I meet somebody who I interact with, like, take a copy with you. And even if if they don't open it, they never read it, they have that physical distillation of what I'm trying to bring to the world, like sitting with them physically in the world. And I think that's one of the reasons why it was a book for me so much, is because I want to be able to just mail something to somebody and have something open that they look at, and it's got a cover and it's got flipping. There is something beautiful about the tactile nature of books that I don't think will ever be replaced. Like we have Kindles now, right? Kindles are great, but still we want the book. We want to feel the weight. We want to flip through the pages. There's something special about books that, like, I can imagine a future where people are in space, but they still have libraries. They have data chips with all of humanity's history and books available, but they still have a collection of their favorites in their office. Like, books hold a particular, almost like energy to them, that isn't the same with a video or a post.
I think if we don't get the first draft out, it'll never get out, because there's like, I'm in this state right now, actually, is like when I go to reread a chapter that I wrote 6 months ago, it's like, oh, I would write this a little differently today. Not a lot differently, but I would change some things. And so I think we could be in the forever process of doing that if we didn't allow ourselves to just
it's a thing with art. Like, a painting is never finished, right? Like you have to decide when you are done, but you can always touch things up. I remember when I was audio engineering, and I do this with my video editing a lot, like I will do too much. I will like mix things to the point that it's like I'm working for 5 hours. I look at the old version. The version 5 hours ago was better than the version 5 hours later. And I'm like, I just spent so much energy on this, and but thankfully I'm a craftsman, and I love the process of getting better at the thing, whether it's video editing or audio editing. It doesn't feel wasted to me because I enjoy refining, and I know that the next one that I create is going to be that much better for the lessons that I wasted in this one. Yeah, it's a little bit daunting. So I'm really glad that that we're on a similar timeline and we can share this experience together, man. Thanks for chatting up about it with me.
Yeah. Thanks for doing this. This conversation has been helpful, and it like lightens the situation for me, because I mean, I don't know about you. I've been in my little box up until recently. I haven't really shared anything with anyone, and recently Victoria's been helping me a lot, and I'm so glad I let her into my box in this project, because she's given me a really fresh perspective on it. And this conversation, like, kind of like, let's people a little more into the box, and like,
and that's an important part of the process is you have to start letting you get to that point where the only way to proceed forward is to start to let people in the box, is to start to get other eyes on it. And it's like this, like, hey, here's my heart. Yeah, man, I gave my. And I knew this was going to happen because it's always been the case with my mom. But I showed it to my mom, and she was ruthless with her feedback. It was like, I don't like this at all. This makes no sense. I don't understand what you're talking about. And I was prepared. I knew it was coming, but it was like, it was kind of good in a sense because I'm like, I know she's the worst critic. Like if I can like revise it so that she understands it and she gets it, everyone will understand it and get it. So valuable in that sense, but necessary. Like we can't start to take those next steps until we start to invite alternative perspectives in and get that feedback. And that's really and I think that's kind of what's daunting most about this next step. It's not even the amount of effort ahead, because I could easily start a new book and start writing a whole new book, and that wouldn't feel nearly as daunting. But it's daunting to like start to share your heart in this way and then receive what the world thinks about it, and then have to reform around that feedback in order to make it fit the world and not just yourself. And in that reformation, it's almost like you have to let something die. You have to let something go. Like there might be a way that you phrase something that you're like, oh, I liked that. And then everyone is like, no, like that's not the way. And you're like, fuck, but like that just really resonated with me. And they're like, well, if you want other people to resonate with it, do that. And you have to sacrifice almost a little bit of yourself in order to bring this creation baby into its most valuable version for the world. And that's a big part of this stage that really like, I don't know, it feels like a lot.
Yeah. Be aware of who you're sharing it with and why. And not everyone's like criticism or feedback is designed for you to change the book. It's just designed to give you a better perspective of who it's written for.
But like my mom's feedback did open my eyes to a perspective of seeing things that was valuable. Even though I'm taking her feedback through my lens of awareness, I think having that perspective did reveal more to me. And that's kind of what happens. Like the more perspectives you take in, the more that can be revealed, as long as you can manage your center and emotional reaction to that feedback. Right? Because I was prepared for it. I knew what was coming. But if I had just been like, here, mom, here's the thing, it would like affect me. And then that would maybe like cloud me and fill me with doubts. But because I was prepared, instead I was able to step back and say like, interesting. Okay. That's how she's seeing it. How can I adjust how I'm seeing it with that new information? Really it's such a fascinating process, this book writing, this bringing to creation to being through this particular method. And I love how you said timeless, because it's like books were the first form of sharing ideas. Like written language was the original, long before we had audio, long before we had video. So we are tapping into something that it's like almost every great, or I won't even say great, but every person who aspired to share their ideas in the world has gone through this process of trying to distill them into words and then form them into chapters and then reform and edit them so they fix. And it's a beautiful process. I'm really enjoying it. And God, it's gonna feel good to hold the version, the first edition, not the finished end, but the first edition in my hands is gonna be like a, you know, and I'll feel very proud. And I can't wait to hold yours in my hand and be like, God damn, Chris made this thing. I guess the last question I'd ask is, if there's somebody out there who feels like they have a book inside them that they want to bring forward into the world, do you have any words for them? It doesn't necessarily need to be guidance, but just anything that comes through that you feel like from your experience a little further down the line to their experience, maybe not starting yet, but feeling like they should, what would you say?
So every book starts with an idea, is the first thing I would say. And I won't say every idea, but I'd venture to say every idea has the potential to make an impact for someone. So what I would do is get clear about what your idea is. Like what is your motivation? What is your unique expression? And get clear about what that is. I think that's an important step in the book that I kind of skipped over, or I had a broad idea. Get really clear on what that is. And then if you really want to write a book, sit down for 15 minutes a day and write on that one idea, on that one expression that you want to bring to the world. And you'll know in a month, 3 months, if you're going to be an author or not. You'll know in 6 months, you'll know, whatever. Just start. Honestly, just start is probably the best advice. I think that everyone and anyone deserves to tell a story. I would argue that the more life experience you have, the better your story is going to be. And so if you don't feel like you have a book worth writing in you, is like, go live a life that is a book worth writing, and then write the book.
Live a great story.
Yeah, for sure.
And I'll just add to that, to close it out, to say the writing a book is so much more than just having a book written. Through the process, you really learn what it is you think. You really refine how you structure your own internal thought process. And I think that's the most valuable thing for me is not the end product that I'm really excited about and I can't wait to have, but also just the refinement in my own perspective of how I think about things that is forcibly required in order to structure a book properly in a way that somebody else could read it. It's like you don't know what you think until you start to try to write it out. And then as you write it out, you reflect on it and it refines, and through that process of picking the right words and placing them in the right spot, it actually does something to your mind, which is a little bit deeper than the external. Like there is a internal benefit that the author gains by going through the process of writing a book that is invaluable. And I've really enjoyed the experience.
Well said, brother. Well said.
Welcome to bpeakxp.com, your source for the most potent and distilled transformational tools in the world.